This is Duke University.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm still getting my feet wet in the Bull City. I learned how to do this. They told me if I didn't learn how to do this, I wasn't going to be able to, work in the department. So I was doing it wrong for a few weeks, and I got it right now. But it's been an exciting 6 months here in Durham. It's difficult working and trying to move a household. My husband was still in Atlanta, and he just recently moved to the Durham area after taking an early retirement off of his job. So I've been in the business for 30 years, and things have changed considerably. And I've watched the evolution of law enforcement go from community policing to high-tech policing back to community policing. And really, to tell you the truth, high-tech policing and community policing need to be married together because technology is the way of the 21st century. And it's been my challenge here in Durham because when one of my officers pulled out a flip phone, I was like, okay, what is that? And it's funny. He said, "Well, these are the only phones they'll pay for." So we're gonna change that. So I've been really trying to introduce technology into the Durham Police Department over the last 6 months. Everything from doing work on Surface Pros as opposed to having to go back to the CPU in the office. To social media, which is really critical in our work nowadays, not just for communication and real-time communication, but also for investigations as well. So it's been a very, very busy first 6 months. I wanted to really get to know Durham, so I spent a lot of time in my first, 4 months just being out. And it was good that my husband wasn't here, so he didn't expect anybody to be cooking for him. And I had an opportunity to really immerse myself in the community, and just, see the diversity that exists in the city of Durham. And one thing that I did recognize early on was that the city of Durham has some of the very same attributes and issues that the city of Atlanta has. Atlanta is a much larger city, but even though it's a much larger city, there's some very, very similar sort of characteristics, with being, this being a big college town and having an influx of population. I think Durham has probably had an increase in population over the last 8 years of over 25,000 people, and that's really a lot of people for a city this size. And when you think in terms of, where are these people going to fit in Durham, So all of the apartments are coming up downtown, and you're seeing the population change. And we experienced that in the city of Atlanta post-1996 Olympics. There was a lot of work done in the city, a lot of development, a lot of mixed use space. Many of our housing projects were torn down. Just a lot of, change that took place prior to the Olympics. And after that, the city just blossomed and continued to grow and grow and grow. And today, it's still growing exponentially. The metropolitan Atlanta area, several million, and of course, several counties. But when you think about Durham, you can't really just think about Durham because Durham has, the Triangle has other major cities that are in such close proximity, which is so unique, and they're major cities. That's what makes this a really unique. If you get tired of Durham, you just ride 15 minutes and you're in Raleigh, or you go across 15501 and you're in Chapel Hill. So I learned that real quick if I wanted to get away. And so I started, I said, everywhere I go, I can't go anywhere without somebody knowing who I am. So one night I decided I was going to go over to, I said, I think I'm going to drive to Raleigh and see what's in Raleigh and just maybe have some private time. I went in a little cupcake shop and walked in the door, and the guy said, "You're the new chief in Durham." I was like, okay. So I can't run and I can't hide, that's for sure. But it's been good, and the people in this great city have received me well, and they've been very excited about my coming here as much as I have been about being here. So, of course, in law enforcement today, we're facing challenges, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. What is challenges? And I've been in so many meetings. I'm starting to tell people, look, guys, just meet me out there on the street. We need to really stop talking about it and be about it. There's so many folks that want to get their hands in it, and they talk about want to get. I think if we could just mobilize, the masses of people that are interested to deal with the very, very the small geographical areas where these problems exist, get our arms around this thing. You get tired of talking about it. So, but I've met some people that are really interested in, coming together and collaborating, not just in a silo, because there are so many different interest groups about what can we do with our young people? What can we do about guns? What can we do about education? Why can't we get these young people jobs, and so on and so on? Well, there's so many things that contribute to why a person's conditions are the way they are. And I don't have to tell you, you already know. You've been studying different things in the environment and social studies, and all of the ills in our community, and it's much deeper than arresting crime away. You can't arrest crime away. And I know you can't do that. I've been in it for 30 years, and if you could, it would have been gone by now. We were arresting 30 years ago and 40 years prior to that, and it's still here. You can't arrest crime away. And until we really look at the real problem and come up with solutions that get to the root of the problem, then we're going to continue to see the level of, crime problems that we have. And it's not just here in Durham, and I'm not saying it scare anybody, but there's an uptick in violent crime around the country. The number of guns on the street is unbelievable. I was talking about a shooting that occurred, just this past Saturday night. And those guys had semi-automatic weapons. And it was not a pretty scene. And, so how does a young person get semi-automatic weapons and have the mindset, no sense of value for life, that they can just snuff the life out of somebody else just that quick? And they got the wrong guy. The guy that was driving just happened to be in somebody else's car. He wasn't even the owner of the car, and they were going after that particular car. They got the car, but they got the wrong guy. So last night I was at a vigil over there where this incident occurred, a prayer vigil. It's probably 200 or 300 people out there, very upset because this was a person who had at one point in time in his life had been in trouble and been, involved in gangs. But recently, over the last year, he had been doing some serious work in the community. This is a young man that was about 30 years old. And of course, he was still, associated with some of those folks, because you can't just go cold turkey. You still know some of these people. But he had been doing work in the community and was really trying to turn his life around. And unfortunately, he was killed. And there was such an outpouring of emotion last night because everybody knew that he had made a transition. And I think they were hurt at the loss of life, but they were hurt because this was someone who had taken a big step to say, you know what, I'm not going to just, change I'm going to help somebody else. And then there were a couple of other victims too. So that scene played out, of course, and that's the scene that's playing out across the country right now. And I know this is a country where everyone wants to be armed, and I'm not going to get on a political position about guns, but because guns are so available now and there's so many more weapons out on the street, we have seen an uptick in gun violence, the ability to get your hands on a gun. And most of the time, the individuals who are legal gun owners, that's where some of my suspects get their guns, from legal gun owners, because they break in cars, they break in folks' houses. And when we have a violent crime or a gun crime and there's evidence, or we retrieve a gun or whatever, many times, more times than not, it's a stolen weapon. It's a stolen weapon. So it's a fine line. You don't want to infringe upon the rights of a person to be able to possess a weapon. But at the same time, we want a safe society, So, I think that's something, and I just kind of, rolled into that conversation, I guess, because it was on my forehead right now. I see it so much as of late here in the Durham area. And it's high on my list. And it's not high on my list to get my stats down, because most chiefs around the country, their goals are get the numbers down, We want to reduce the robberies, we want to reduce the homicides and everything. You can do that. You can arrest people, but if you're not changing the fabric of the community, if you're not impacting change in some way, you're really just playing, I call it whack 'em. You might deal with it here, but it's going to pop up someplace else, So there has to be a collaborative effort to really look at the real issues that plague our communities. A lot of it has to do, some of it is mental illness. You have folks nowadays that they might be involved in crime, but all you got to do is sit down and talk to them for about 15 minutes, and you say, you know what? There's something wrong with this kid, It's beyond the fact that he might not even be evil. It's just something wrong with him. And it could have happened because of the environment in which that person was raised. So, as a chief, I have to look at things, and not just as a chief. Okay, this is what I do. It's not who I am. So who I am is a mother, a wife. I come from a family. My father was in the military, and we were brought up in a very, very strict household. But it wasn't strict in the sense that, we didn't have opportunities to be in the community and understand the value of good relationships and good neighbors. When I was growing up, it was during the time when there was a lot going on in the United States, and my father had us over in Okinawa, and they sort of protected us from what was going on here in the United States during the Civil Rights Movement. So I didn't see a lot of the division and the divisiveness, and they never talked about it. I think they were just happy that their children didn't have to experience it. And then by the time, we came back to the United States and my father retired, I was probably in the 5th or 6th grade. And he retired, and we settled in Atlanta, home of the Civil Rights Movement. So I quickly became familiar with civil rights and human rights issues. And I became very proud of, the work that so many people did in order for me to, today I look at it, I say, a Black female chief of police in the United States, it's not very many of us. It's just not. It's not that many of us. But I don't forget that there were people who paved the way for me to be here. I don't take it for granted. And when you talk about who paved the way, it wasn't. And when you look at movies and things, you see it wasn't just the Martin Luther Kings. There were people from all walks of life that laid their lives down so that this country could be one where we could all be free. I was gonna say something, but I ain't gonna say it. But so so now here I am, and I have this compelling sort of commitment that my work really isn't just about the Durham Police Department. It's that, okay, you're here, you're in a position of power, you're in a position to really invoke change in the community, because you can call the shots. You can make officers do what it is that they need to do every day, and if they don't like it, they can go somewhere else and work. And they know I really mean that too, because even though this is demanding work, it's rewarding work. And in spite of what we see across the country with Black Lives Matter and all of the issues that we have to sort of mull through right now and find the answers to right now, there's some great officers on the street every day that are really in it for all the right reasons. And unfortunately, they get lumped in that bucket. So when they come to a community meeting, sometimes the pulse of the community isn't even about that officer. It's just about police in general. Well, why is the police doing? And so the officers, they take that beating. They take the beating for whatever happened in Charlotte or whatever happened in McDougal Terrace or whatever the case might be. We all wear the uniform, so we have to take that beating. But at the same time, I have to go back and encourage them. No matter what's going on out there right now, there is a mass community that is depending on us to provide a level of safety for them to be able to sleep at night. And we still have to do our job. So it's becoming more and more difficult because naturally they're humans too. And I'm having to sort of recalibrate what has been taught and what the culture has been. And it hasn't been bad. It's just that some of the old school kind of policing, like checkpoints and all that kind of stuff, that's old school, and it worked back in the day when there were open air drug sales, when folks were out in the street really selling crack cocaine. You don't see that anymore. So when your problems change, then your strategies have to change. That doesn't work anymore in certain neighborhoods because now you have populations of people who are just trying to get to and from work every day, or just trying to get home. Yeah, I may have a broken tail light. If I had the money to fix it, then I'd fix it. But I don't have the money to fix it. And I've got violent crime. So why are you messing with Ms. Jones that has a broken tail light and she doesn't even have the money to fix it, and you about to give her a ticket that's going to cost her $75? So some of that thinking is part of me having to really kind of school my officers a little bit about what makes sense to us today. How do we spend our time? What's the best way for us to spend our time and our resources in order to make a change? And I try to impact upon them that every encounter, you represent the Durham Police Department. And even if you have to arrest somebody, you can arrest a person with respect and dignity. And that person can go to jail, and once they go to jail for whatever it was that they did, in their minds they say, Officer Jones treated me with respect and dignity. And then you don't have to worry about coming to my office with a complaint, an unnecessary complaint. But part of that is that old culture of power in the badge. And like I said, it's not with everybody, but it's it can be a culture that is hard to change if it's not changed at the top. It has to be changed at the top and all the way down. So over my last 6 months, I've been making some assessments of who's going to stand up to the change and who's resisting the change. And the only reason I understand the importance of change is because I spent a lot of time in my 30 years making sure that I educated myself. I knew it was available for my career, for my law enforcement, partners, and making sure that my officers and the people that reported to me were trained on contemporary policing and concepts of what community policing really is. It's not just a slogan. It's what you do every day. It's how you talk to people every day. It's almost like you have to brand yourself as a department so that when people see your badge and your patch, they don't think in terms of that bad experience they had. They think in terms of those guys are really out there trying to do the right thing. And that takes a lot of work from the leadership down. So, and I know I've said a lot, but I wanted to sort of, just sort of introduce myself in that way, just so you know exactly what I've been dealing with. Of course, we just rolled out body cameras recently. That was an uphill battle. Like, really? I never thought that getting technology would be difficult, but we've got the body cameras now. We've rolled them out, and the officers are excited about it. I'm excited about it. Body cameras aren't a panacea for all of the woes. They're just another tool. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't even work. I've had to already pull 3 of them that, brand new body cameras, they're a problem with them. So, but we're glad to have them because they're going to be another tool that will help us to assess an incident, help put the pieces together. When you have that extra footage, you can say, that doesn't look like that happened that way. You want to kind of, look at that again and tell me why you did that, or why you said that. So we're looking at that technology. We may be looking at license plate readers real soon. And license plate readers, I think, in Atlanta, we use license plate readers not so that we could go read everybody's license plates and pull up their histories and all of that. License plate readers are a great tool to use for law enforcement. Say, for instance, you report your car stolen. You give me your tag number. Put your tag number in the system. That's the only tag number that I'm looking for in that system. And a car passes by that tag reader, I'm going to get a ping that tag just passed by. So we're not interested in all of the other tag numbers in the community. It's so that we can find ways to impact, our crime issues and be able to identify, yes, we just had a ping at the corner of Trenton and what's that street out there? In Irwin. And once that ping is picked up, that officer can return your car relatively quickly. So we're looking at license plate readers. We're also looking at camera systems. So the camera systems really are more of a deterrent than anything. It's not so that we can sit there and be big brother and be watching, everybody. If you're out in the public, you don't have an expectation of privacy anyway because everybody's got a cell phone. They're taking pictures and doing all kinds of things and video and all that kind of stuff. So cameras in public area, in public spaces, help us to be able to monitor areas where we have had crime problems. And many times when you put cameras up, it's a deterrent because folks don't want to commit a crime when they know that there's a camera, up. And we had a lot of success in Atlanta. That was one of my projects before I left. I was over a division called Strategies and Special Projects. And we started out with about 400 cameras in the city. And when I left, it was over 12,000 all over the city. We didn't buy those cameras. Most of those cameras came from buildings like our Georgia State University, Georgia Tech, where cameras were already up. And what we did is we just tapped into the cameras on the outside, on the perimeters of the schools. We were able to tap into those cameras so that if you're walking up and down the street at 3 o'clock in the morning for whatever reason, I hope you're not doing that, and we had 24-hour video integration center, our officers could zoom in different areas and monitor areas real time to help keep our eyes on the city. So I don't know, you know, if that's technology that will be coming soon. There has been some talk about getting cameras here in the Durham area. But before I go any further, I just want to be able to answer questions or at least, you know, take advantage of this opportunity to have dialogue about any issues that you think are important, you know. Y'all might not ask me to come back again. So let's do it. Anybody have anything that they want to?
So I know when you first came to Durham and took office, one of your major concerns was the lack of the Hispanic representation on the Durham police force. And you mentioned that you wanted to address that and hiring more officers, hiring more Spanish-speaking officers. How do you go about in a police force sort of getting into a community where, you know, police presence isn't really a common thing and getting that community to participate in the policing?
Yeah. That's a really touchy area right now anyway, but we've made some great headway with that. So let me tell you, when I first got here, one of the liaisons that I appointed first was our LGBTQ liaison. I really wanted to, not just to have a liaison for the community, I wanted to have a liaison for the department. I wanted the officers that were a part of the organization to feel that anybody can be a Durham police officer. And I think by identifying an individual that wanted to take on that role and didn't have a problem with being in the community and helping to establish that relationship, it would also send a message to my officers that that's who I am, that I understand the importance that we have an open door for anyone who wants to be a part of our organization. And they understood that really quick because, and then we marched in, for the very first time in history, marched in the LGBTQ parade here, which was a lot of fun. Yeah, oh, you were there? Oh, good, good. It was a lot of fun. And you know what? It wasn't just my LGBTQ officers, it was other officers that participated and they had a great time. And I think the community really received that well. So to your point, the next individual, I had to do a little bit more evaluating because I wanted to identify someone who could not only speak fluent Spanish, but also to be able to write as well, because that individual would help to develop material, help us set up our website where we had a portal so that our Hispanic community could get the exact same information from the police department that the English-speaking community was receiving. So we have identified a person who went through the selection process. His name is Obed Ortiz. And last Saturday, Ortiz accompanied me to the Faith ID initiative that took place. I can't remember the location, but there were probably 300 immigrant community members that were participating. They were surprised to see the chief there because right now the community is a little bit on edge. And all they know is that the police are here, and the police in Mexico are not like the police in the United States. And you know, immigration authorities bring about a lot of fear. And sometimes when they see the uniform, all they think is ICE. So a lot of my conversation was, I am not ICE. So, and I was able to convey that to the group. We had dialogue for about 2 hours with and they were able to ask questions about different things. But I think what really made them feel comfortable was when Ortiz, for the first time, he was able to speak in their language, and everybody's face just lit up that this officer is speaking to us. And he talked about the fact that he was going to be working in their community, and that's what his job is today. He will be working 40 hours a week, doing nothing but helping to train, our Hispanic and non-English speaking community, helping them with personal types of issues. How do I go to the DMV and get my driver's license straightened out? And there were questions, from all over about all kinds of different, issues that this group was having. And I just felt very, very, satisfied that this officer is going to be sort of like their point of contact. Not only with that, I made it perfectly clear that we want bilingual officers on the department. We want people to feel welcome to come on. And so Ortiz is going to be doing some recruiting and everything. But right now, our community is a little bit on edge. And there's a lot of fear. I think there was a Latino radio station that sent me an email on Friday, and they wanted me to state what my position was on the whole immigration directive. But I didn't have to respond to that because the International Association of Chiefs of Police came out with a statement, because I think they realized that this subject matter was one that local law enforcement was going to have to be dealing with, because the belief was that local law enforcement was going to be made to enforce immigration laws. So that's something that we have not done in the past. And we had a little brief conversation over here. I don't see the Durham Police Department participating in, and as I said before, I think that's why our interim U.S. attorney just sort of stepped down. There's certain areas, why victimize a community that's already victimized? So, and that might have been a political statement, but I'm sorry. But the statement came out from the International Association of Chiefs of Police, basically saying that we will shore up as an organization, and the IACP is the organization I'm talking about. I'm a member, and most chiefs are members. Chiefs all over the world are members. And we normally come together to, educate, put out position statements as it relates to law enforcement and which direction we're going to take on different things. And their statement was basically that we will be lowering up, so to speak, to make sure that local law enforcement isn't forced to get in the middle of the quagmire, and that we have some priorities in our communities as it is. We don't have the resources to participate, if you will, in this directive that's out. So I don't foresee us doing anything but continue to try to bridge that gap. And it won't be like those one-time faith ID things. We will be working on establishing other opportunities to be able to go in the community, do PowerPoint presentations, help to educate our community on how to protect themselves, because our Latino community here in Durham has been victimized by, walking up and down the street, getting robbed at certain times of the hours of night, and even in the daytime, going to and from work and standing at bus stations and things. And we're just very concerned that, if you become an easy target, then it's easy to be preyed upon that way. So we're trying to help people to be more responsible for themselves too. I know that was a long answer, but it's a lot going on right now in our Hispanic community. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
So I'm interested to hear, with your fresh eyes coming from a different part of the country, how do you see the relationship between the Duke population and the rest of the Durham population, both in terms of just the community and maybe, the different police forces?
You know, Duke has a great reputation, you know, all over the world. Duke has a great reputation. And I have seen where there's so many different programs where Duke is reaching out into the community in so many different ways to help with, you know, some of the grassroots things that need to be done as far as mentoring programs. And you know, is it enough? Do I think that there could be more? I don't know just yet. I know I'm going to take advantage of the opportunities that people have extended to me. You know, I've had a couple of folks from Duke to say, oh, we would love to support the Durham Police Department. As a matter of fact, I think we're going to be doing a leadership kind of series here at Duke that I'm working with Chief Daly, who's going to bring the right people in the room, because it kind of goes back to what I was talking about as far as, you know, trying to change the culture in our department. And leadership for me is just critical. And if my folks don't start thinking in terms that there's a different world out there and that we have to do things different, no, you can't police the community. You know, you have to establish relationships. You can't solve crimes because nobody trusts you to tell you anything right now. And when you can't solve crimes, that means there's not a relationship. Anybody look at First 48? You look at First 48? First 48 is sort of an investigator. It's real stuff. Those are my folks in Atlanta. I'm going to do that here, though. So, but the relationship between the investigator and the community member or the suspect is one where he speaks his language. If you don't know how to speak the language of the community members that you're dealing with, then you're not going to be able to establish the kind of relationship you need in order to deal with problems and get information in order to go after the right people as well. But getting back to your question about how I say, I can't wait to continue to explore, you know, the opportunities here at Duke too, because there's some bright minds here, you know, in this room, I know. And there are folks that, you know, want to get involved. But I think because there's so many different silos of work being done, we're not seeing the impact because everybody got their own little program. You know, everybody, this is my program. I got my name over here, Project Bill, Project Rise Up. Y'all get that? Atlanta Falcons, Rise Up? You didn't get that. Had to throw that one in. But I think that there's great opportunity here. So I met with the board here probably, I would say maybe a month after I came to Durham. Is it President Broadhead? Okay. So President Broadhead set up a reception for me with board members. It was sort of a breakfast reception. And, you know, the members of the board that, you know, came to that meeting, they were all so very accommodating and wanting to get more involved with the Durham Police Department and wanting to know what they could do in order to help facilitate a safer city for, you know, not just for the citizens, but for, you know, Duke students. And of course, Chief Daly was at that meeting as well. And he and I have been talking a lot about, you know, how we can collaborate more as well. So did you have any particular ideas or any perspective on that?
No, I mean, it's, we live sort of far from Duke.
Okay.
More, I would say, in the regular part of Durham, not the part of Durham, which I like. No, but that's interesting, and it is interesting to see that relationship.
Yeah, and yeah, I was really pleased. It was unexpected, and I was saying earlier, my sister, she went on and finished school, got her PhD and everything, but she, for years, she has always talked about, I wish I could have gone to Duke. I wish I could have. Then when I got assigned, you know, I got appointed here. She's, oh my God, you're going to Durham. I'm going to get in that school some kind of way. So she's so funny. Duke is a jewel here, you know, and I know probably, isn't it the largest employer in the area? Yeah, absolutely.
That's the
That's a hospital.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
Duke is a hospital with a little school.
That's funny.
I was just gonna say, to keep on this tangent, so I did my undergrad at Duke also, so I started here about 10 years ago, and the book that we had to read for my summer reading, which I actually did read because I thought I was gonna get in trouble if I didn't read it, was about race relations and the history of race relations in Durham, and it was very clear even from 2007 that Duke was aware that this had been like a historical problem in Durham, and I remember my what are the facts that take you as a freshman, like none of you guys are all grad students. They take you, yeah, they took us to your upperclassmen that you met when you were freshmen and terrified and wanted your mother, and they took us downtown, and I remember these two sorority girls who were drinking whatever Crystal Light were don't come downtown. You're a small white girl, don't come downtown, just stay on campus. And that was the message that my generation of undergrads got, and that's I think completely different now. And it's been crazy just to see in 5, 6, 7 years that change of everyone go downtown. It's really fun now. But when I first started here, the message was don't go downtown.
Right. You see how quick it changed.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I was actually going to ask the same question as Bryce did, but more from the perspective of the broader Durham community. Do they still hate us?
Well, you know what? There's still a lot of, and I'm not going to say a lot, but there are pockets of communities that have animosity about the growth of Durham. You know, and that they feel that there isn't real opportunities to be a part. One thing I noticed when I first got here, I stayed at the Residence Inn. You all know where it is, right there across from the Pizza Hut, because I was pizza place, wherever it was, but I was over there at the pizza place almost every night. So I was at the Residence Inn for about 3 or 4 months, and what I noticed, because coming out of Atlanta, you know, I'm used to getting out, walking around downtown and everything, and everybody's mingling, and it's a melting pot. You see everybody from everywhere. So what I noticed in the downtown area was, I said, now, this is a city that has a very, very large African-American population. But at nighttime, you know, it's crowded downtown, but I didn't see the community members. And I started asking questions, you know, and I know they were looking at me crazy. I was like, why y'all don't go downtown? It's nice down there. I had a good time down there, you know? And so I had some community members say that's not for us. I did. I had some community members that felt that the downtown area was not for them, so to speak. And I think some of that was, you know, we didn't get a piece of the pie. There's this history about Hayti as well. And some of you might be familiar with Hayti, you know, African American business strip of the Durham area that was quite flourishing and prominent, you know, in the day. And then it just sort of, I don't know the history about the demise of the Hayti area. I don't know if it was the gentrification or the inner city growth or whatever the case might be. But yeah, somebody told me that. They said the blue light bridge. Is that a true story?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Durham Freeway sort of divided the business district of Hayti. So, and of course, you know, that's not the whole story about why people don't come downtown. For this city to be the jewel that it is, I would really love to see it be more diverse and people take advantage of business and advantage of the, you know, the opportunities to you know, see what's new in Durham and what's coming up in Durham. And now there's some African-American businesses down there. I went over to the BU, I believe it was, and Dane's Chicken and Waffles, eaten there several times. Several times. But you gotta wait. You gotta wait an hour to get in there. Yeah.
First, thank you, Chief Davis, for coming. This has been said some fascinating things today.
Oh, good.
So Yeah, very fascinating. I wanted to ask a little bit about some policy of the police department. And so I know that the Human Relations Commission released a report on the conditions in the jail recently, and one of their recommendations was that for the department to do a kind of cite and release or catch and release policy that would avoid people going down to the jail when they first get arrested and avoid them going through the bond system and being forced to pay fines that they can't afford.
Yeah.
Is that a kind of policy that you are interested in implementing? And if so, like why or why not?
Well, if you're familiar with some of the programs that have been implemented recently, when I first got here, they were really rolling out the misdemeanor diversion program. So the misdemeanor diversion program, that the first phase of it was really focusing on young people, I think between the ages of 15, 16 up to 18, that if they committed some type of misdemeanor, whether it was marijuana, small amounts of marijuana, shoplifting, or whatever the case might be, instead of going to jail, then you would agree to go through this misdemeanor diversion program, which would mean that you wouldn't have a record, you don't have to go down to the jail, and you just have to go through courses in these various stages. So the first orientation that I went to that exposed me to the misdemeanor diversion program, Judge Moray, some of you might know Judge Moray, she's sort of overseeing it. The room was full of folks, that were getting ready to get their orientation into this program. All of them had committed something. And what was surprising to me is that in that room, it was probably 75% Caucasian. So that said to me that my officers obviously aren't giving everybody an opportunity to go to the misdemeanor diversion program. Of course, we celebrate the success of things, but do we really need to celebrate the success of it if it's not reaching everybody? So,
our undergraduates are involved in a house course where we're trying to put together an outreach project working with the Durham public middle schools, the ones that are most under-resourced. And we looked just this past Sunday at the racial equity report card and saw that while in Durham public schools, Black students represent maybe 46% of the population, they represent 80+%
that's right.
of students that are sent into the justice system.
That's right. And I saw some recent numbers, and they are alarming. They are alarming. So, I had to tread, carefully as a new chief. What you don't want to do is you don't want your troops to just go completely ballistic because you're making accusations. But the numbers don't lie. And what I did was, instead of do a lot of talking about it, I just changed the policy. Because the policy read that the officer may introduce a person to the misdemeanor diversion. And when you tell somebody you may do it, that means you don't have to do it,
Right.
So I changed the policy so it's mandatory. If that individual, doesn't matter from what walk of life they come from, if they meet this criteria, the officer has to send them to this misdemeanor diversion program. Needless to say, the demographic in the room changed considerably when we changed the policy. So a lot of the work of changing the culture has a lot to do with policy changes. Now, the next step in that is that now we're looking at extending the age of the misdemeanor diversion program. So say, for instance, if a person is 25, but they've never had any type of arrest before, and they decide they're going to go to Nordstrom's and shoplift or something. Instead of them having a record at that age, could be a college student, could be someone who's got a pretty decent job, don't need to be in jail, or whatever the case might be. The most reasonable and feasible outcomes for those kinds of situations is not to put another body in jail, not to handicap a person, you know, by having something on their record that's going to keep them from being able to move on in life. Because when you do that, then you have created another problem someplace else. So now we have agreed that the misdemeanor diversion program will go beyond age 18. It's for adults. It's for if you're 65 years old now and you commit a misdemeanor and you never had one before or within a certain period of time, we're not taking you down to jail. We're not going to put you in a cell or anything like that. We're going to make you go through this program. And once you go through Judge Moray's program, you don't want to hear her no more anyway. So, because she has a way of really, you know, laying it on you. So we're really starting to look at systems and how do you change this whole, like I said, if locking people up would solve the problem, we wouldn't have a problem. We've locked enough people up. That's why they're letting them out. You know, I think President Obama said, here, 300 more. See ya. This is the last one I'm going to let out before I get out of here. But it's not solving anything. So thank you for that question.
Sort of a follow-on to that, until the election and the inauguration, the sort of Black Lives Matter movement was really in the news a lot, and they still are, but I think Trump's kind of taking away their spotlight. But so have you, as a police chief or just Durham Police Department in general, had chances to dialogue with them, or are they open to that kind of dialogue? What is how do you interact?
Well, it just depends on the climate of the group. You know, I'm open to talk to anybody. But you have some people, it doesn't matter if it's Black Lives Matter or not, they just don't like police, period. So I have had an opportunity to have dialogue in small groups because sometimes, you know, people need a bully pulpit in order to, you know, completely get away from what the real issue is. And I identified a particular community leader who was, when I first got here, you know, in charge of some of the protests. And I said to her, I said, you know what? We need to have coffee. And we had coffee. And, you know, I brought to light some issues that she was able to, well, you know, I never thought about it that way. And she brought to light some things that have happened here in the city of Durham that, you know, sometimes we need to just talk because, you know, and I'm not saying that, you know, people shouldn't protest because when emotions are flying and people want to be able to demonstrate that I am not okay with this. I'll tell you what my frustration is. Saturday night, when I see a 16-year-old riddled with bullets and nobody's frustrated about that. Nobody's protesting about it. I had 43 homicides last year. I didn't have one protest about any of those homicides. So I know we have issues in law enforcement, but I sure wish that at some point we would value life in general. You know, whether it's a police officer's life, whether it was a life that was taken by a police officer, whether it was a life that was taken by some other citizen, life is life. And you know, all of the labels that this is more important. We really need to deal with just in general. How are these encounters happening? When I first came onto the police department, we never had encounters where, you know, you had to be fearful that it was always going to end up in a gunfight. And not being able to understand why our young people now are quick to move. Oh, and they have weapons. So, you know, we bought a shooting simulator recently. And the shooting simulator was so that we could help our officers make quick decisions. So they could think fast, make quick decisions. And the shooting simulator is state-of-the-art technology. And what it does is it gives you a real-life scenario. It's like a room about this size, actually. And that whole wall back there is the visual simulator. You're actually interacting and talking, and the machine has characters on it, and you're responding. We decided to take the news media through our shooting simulator for decisions and making quick. They killed everybody on the screen. It's not that easy to quickly make a decision, a split. That's why we have to train our officers over and over again. The dynamics have changed now. Now when you pull somebody over, when I used to get pulled over, I wasn't afraid about anything. I wasn't afraid about anything, not because I was a police person, but back then you didn't have to be afraid. Oh, I must have been speeding. My driver's license, proof of insurance, let me get it out of there. And when the officer came to the window, you gave it to him. He said, you know how fast you were speeding, man? I said, I'm in a hurry. Yeah, I knew how fast. Give you a ticket and you're on your way. That's not the way our traffic stops are going these days. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that people aren't educated on how to have safe encounters with the police. You got millennial police and millennial criminals. Everybody's on high octane, you know, seriously. And, you know, moving around, reaching for things, officers scared. Y'all seen how many officers been killed? 66% increase in officer deaths in 2016. So that puts everybody nervous. What is he reaching for? What is he doing? And a lot of times, you know, unfortunately, you know, the person does have a weapon, but did the officer need to use that level of force? And now we're trying to train our officers on de-escalation as opposed to going in, always going in. You know, I've seen shootings where I said, wait a minute. They didn't have to pull up that close. They could have stayed at a distance. They could have assessed the situation a little bit. I think the shooting up in, I want to say it was in Cleveland, probably disturbed me more than any of them. I think it was a 14-year-old boy with a toy gun, and the officers rolled up on him. And when you're in a car already, and he looked like a 14-year-old, and I'm not trying to dissect what they were thinking, but just looking at that, the way we're training our officers to always engage, we're training them now to de-escalate so that we don't have to have these shootouts, so that we can save a citizen and we can save an officer at the same time. Because, you know, I know folks don't like to hear it, but I believe all lives do matter. I really do. I've been to many officer funerals, and I've been to many funerals where it was questionable about whether or not a citizen should have been, you know, shot.
To be fair, Black Lives Matter doesn't mean other lives don't matter. And Black Lives Matter doesn't mean Black Lives Matter more.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And I think there is a space and, you know, to make sure that we can assess these because it happens more to Black community members. It just does. So naturally, we're all concerned about it, but I'm concerned about all of it. You know, not just that one or two. I'm concerned about all of it, because every time I see an African-American young man slain in the middle of the road someplace, to me, my math is different, because now I got him dead and I got somebody else going to jail. He's dead, two going to jail. And when you look at it holistically, you have a community or population that is being annihilated, so to speak. 43 African-American men last year killed here in the city of Durham. People with relatives, family members, children. And for me, it's when is it going to stop, and how do we wrap our arms around what the real solution is going to be, you know? So I didn't mean to get dark on y'all, but yeah. Our officers have overwhelmingly been very, very happy about the body cameras. Now, Pete, the folks in the department that don't want body cameras, it's because you're doing something you don't want somebody to see. If you're doing your job every day, you know, then you don't have to worry about what that camera's going to pick up, because you'll be able to articulate why you did what you did. And some of the agencies that might be resistant to it, they may be agencies that have that embedded culture where, and I'm telling you, it's still some agencies out there, some of your smaller agencies, some of your rural agencies, they're used to doing things the good old boy way, and they don't want anybody filming them or anything like that. When I was in Atlanta, the officers were happy to get body cameras, because what it does is, it's called the Hawthorne effect. I don't know if you all are familiar with the study, the Hawthorne study, but it was basically that when people know that they're being recorded, they have a tendency to modify their behavior. So the officer will modify his behavior, and when the citizen knows that they're being recorded, they're going to modify their behavior. So to your point, everybody's coming to the game in a different space. They're not going to say the things that they would typically say or call the officer out of their name. I can tell you how many times I've been called a B as an officer. But when you got a body camera on, you think somebody's going to do that when they know that they're being recorded? They're going to try to modify their behavior. And we have seen in many agencies across the country that the complaints against officers have gone down exponentially because of the implementation of body cameras. Being careful about what you say, being careful about how you interact. So I have no doubt in my mind that body cameras in the city of Durham is going to have that exact same impact as well.
Can I go to my advisor?
Okay.
Uh-oh. Yes.
I have two quasi questions that I think are linked. One is how do you see the police helping with these second order functions of changing the fabric of Durham? So it's clear to me that you can change your policies and then there's fewer people in the jail, right? I understand that first thing. But when you were talking about really changing the fabric and bringing people together, that's interesting to me given the tension and the perceptions of policing in
Yeah.
the state.
And I think it takes a commitment from leadership. And so, and the reason I say that is because I can't send the officer out and say, go to this community meeting and think that everything is going to get better because he's there. I have personally had to emerge myself in the community and start building relationships so that people will have hope that there's a different kind of person at the top. And that has been very effective over the last 6 months for me to be able, because some of the folks who were protesting at police headquarters, and down at the Bull and places like that. Not saying that they're not there and they may not protest again, but they're protesting not just because we don't like the police. They're protesting because I have a real issue and we're going to get out there and we're going to do whatever. But I can go and have coffee with them now. And when I see them, we hug, as opposed to, there's the chief. We don't talk to the, establishing a real genuine relationship, not superficial, but that I'm just as concerned about the community and establishing some harmony here as you are. Yeah, I got work to do with my officers, but there are a lot of really good officers that don't deserve to be put in that bucket. They do outstanding things. They do crazy stuff every day. I mean, one guy jumped out of his car and was running on the freeway last week trying to help this lady get her dog, and they sliding all over the place with, just some of the stories that just don't ever, about the human side. Because these guys, they have families, they have children, they're concerned about, their own family members being exposed to something bad, so to speak. So,
so my follow-up question, if you don't mind, is
go ahead.
How do we, as a nation, get more police chiefs like you?
It's called cloning. I gotta clone it. You know what? I'm just gonna be honest. You know, by the grace of God, you know, my career trajectory, you know, landed me here, but it started, you know, when I was really young, being in an environment where my parents taught us what was important and, you know, how important it is not to just be all about yourself. And I used to always, you know, say if I ever get in a position of power, people with power, you know, they really irritate me when they don't use it. You know, when you have power and you don't use it to make a change, or you use it to do some stupid kind of stuff, it's just so frustrating. So, you know, being in a position of power is exciting, especially when you know you can go and impact change. Yesterday, I was in a meeting with probably 8 guys. Every last one of them had done hard time in their early 30s, and they all looked like they were probably 55 years old because they had done hard time. But these are guys that probably never would have been able to sit in a room with a chief of police because a chief wouldn't have given them the time of day. You did 25 years in jail. I don't have time for you. Get out of my face. You know, these are guys who are influential in the community. People still look up to them. They bring great value to me as a chief. And they want someone to allow them to participate without judging them, without, you know, bringing up their past. But those are the kind of things that in law enforcement, we have to start thinking, how do you mobilize everybody? Because I could send all of you in the community, but you may not have the same kind of impact that those 8 guys that were sitting at the table. They can stop some things. They're working right now to try to keep that young man that got shot, his family members from retaliating, because that's all they've been talking about over the weekend. And so I've been sort of communicating with them because they're working on my behalf. I can't send my investigators over there because they're really going to shut down. They're not going to talk to them. But those are the kind of things when you start thinking outside of the box on how you can bring value to somebody's life. And I told them, I said, you know what? I'm not judging you. I don't care what you did. You came to me and you want to change your life and you deserve a chance. Let's work together. And I said something to him. I think it probably made a difference for him, that the rear view mirror in a car is small for a reason. You don't need to keep looking in the rear view mirror. You need to look in the windshield ahead of you. And people continue to just put that in their face about, oh, we can't hire you because, so now the city, I've been talking to the mayor, the city is really going to try to work on getting these guys some jobs because they need jobs. You can't put people in an institution and keep them in there forever and think that they can come out and do something different other than what they know. And they don't want to go back to that. So it's going to take that type of acceptance, utilizing people who are already in the community that have influence, that need a chance, that need a job, finding corporations that say, you know what, I'll take a chance on him. I know he did 13 years, you know, for drug trafficking or whatever, but that young man he's through with it and he wants to be able to do something with his life. They deserve a chance.
Yeah, just a follow-up to that, which is amazing to hear. Are you partnering with any of the organizations in Durham that are already doing some of that work, finding jobs for formerly incarcerated folks? Like I think of the Durham Economic Resource Center, Step Up.
TROSA, Step Up.
Right, yeah.
Bull City United.
Yeah, have you been working with any of those groups? So,
yeah. And some of them, say for instance, Step Up. Step Up is one that in their capacity is only, you know, I guess as much as the number of businesses that have positions for them. There's so many unemployed young people out there right now. It is. It's a lot of young folks that are unemployed, and they find themselves in these traps with getting involved in criminal activity, robberies here are just unbelievably on the rise. But it's not just here, it's all over the place. It's almost like robbery is the crime of choice now because it's easy, it's quick money. And we're seeing upticks in robberies all over the country. Most major cities are talking about that. But you still have to get down to the bottom of the problem. Folks are out there robbing people because they need money. And the only way they can get, and of course, yeah, that's, not something that is desirable way to get money. But if opportunities aren't there and if we don't work on having more opportunities then in programs, to help people matriculate to a different place. So, but yeah, I have been working with TROSA and, there are a lot of really good programs here in the city of Durham.
Yeah, I live like a block from the step-up office. So
Okay.
yeah, I know them very well.
And actually, I think that the mayor is going to reach out to them this week to try to help some of the guys that we've been talking to. Yes, sir.
This might be an odd little tangent, but hearing you talk, I've been really stressed this week because I have to like write a paper and do something and like.
I'm not going to write your paper for you.
No. But it's like hearing you talk about the stuff that you've done in the last 6 months just seems insane. Like an intense amount of work. So is that, how do you go about doing that and staying motivated to do it and then just like, having a normal human being's life in your type of position?
It's funny you ask that question because it's been very challenging, but I'm very passionate about what I want to do. And I sort of put myself on a timeline as far as getting certain things done by a certain time frame so that I can move on to the next thing. And part of it has been to really address my leadership because they're the ones that's going to have to understand the vision, the mission, and actually help implement it. So a lot of the work that I've done with them is having leadership retreats, something they've never had before. The first day was a disaster because we talked about change and everybody talked about why we don't need to change and it wasn't until the second day, I think after they got home and they thought about what a fool they acted. They acted like buffoons the first day, just screaming and hollering and all that stuff. And they came in the next day and they were like calm little church mice. And so I said, so what happened? And I think it was our last presenter that day. She drove some things home about not doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a change, something that we've all heard. And why are we so fixated and get so complacent? You can't be successful when you're complacent. When you just think that you're supposed to be comfortable all the time, success hurts. You lose sleep over success. School, it hurts. You miss meals. You don't eat right, you stay up late, but it all, comes together in the end. But until you come out of that comfort zone, you can't have a victory. You can't impact change in any kind of way. So, these 6 months have been really, even though I've been out in the community myself, because I knew I could go out there faster than I could teach them how. So I've been out there a lot, but at the same time been really working with them internally. And I have started to see some very, very positive changes in some of my leadership. I really have. And I'm really proud of them, to tell you the truth. It was already there. Of course, I had to chew a couple of them out, but, but they understood. For example, we had a meeting over at NCCU. This was probably the first month that I was here. A lot of panel discussions going on because there were shootings around the country. If y'all remember, every time you turn around, somebody was having a town hall meeting or panel discussion or whatever. You probably had some over here. So I was going to a panel discussion and I told my command staff, I want all of you to, and so one of them said, well, I'll go with you, Chief. I said, no, I want everybody. I want the entire command staff to come. So I'm sitting on stage along with some other chiefs in the Triangle area. My staff come in. These are my leaders in the department. They go to the very back of the room and sit in the very back of the room, all clustered together. All white males over at NCCU, and we're talking about community engagement.
Right.
So I'm sitting on the stage and I'm looking back there and I was like, why y'all gonna do me like this? So the moderator is the one that asked them everybody to kind of move up closer. So after all of that, make a long story short, after all of that, you know, I had to tell, if you want to have a better relationship with the community, you have to stop segregating yourself from the community. You know, Sir Robert Peel said the police are the community and the community is the police. You are a part of the community. So you are really asking for this wedge between you and the people that you say don't like you. They don't like you because you don't act like you like them. So they haven't had anybody to really give them that perspective of it. And I think coming from my lens, you know, they got it and basically said, Chief, that's not going to happen again. We promise. And believe me, they have really, now when we go in meetings, they go to the front of the room. They go, make sure they go sit in the front seats. They talk to people, you know, instead of thinking that everybody hates us. They're going to hate you if you act like, you know, you deserve to be hated, you know. So it's a work in progress.